Okay, we'll be back. Thank you, everyone. I'd like to start with I think we're at agenda review, no? Yeah. If Ms. Groves Allison would like to cover Mr. Renault's agenda.
Sure. We approved a new non-discrimination and sexual harassment clause that really was outdated and needed updated, and spent the bulk of our time in executive session for labor relations.
Thank you. Is that a policy that is coming up for approval by the board, or is it just a ministerial action?
It will
No,
be.
it'll be on the November 12th board agenda.
Thank you. Any questions for the acting chair? Seeing none, we would go to Mr. Public Safety, Mr. Rosenbaum.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We had 3 resolutions. The first one was with the Sheriff's Department in the jail. It's a WellPath Correctional Health Care contract extension. Instead of putting it out for bids this year with everything being up in the air with the COVID, they got an extension. They got a little better deal where if the jail population stays under a certain amount, they'll get rebates. The next one's the medical and mental health care services at the Juvenile Detention Center. Along the same lines as that one, they extended it. Both of them will be put out in 2021 for 2022 bids. And the third one was the animal control agreements. All the municipalities but Norwood agreed to one form or another of it. Becky didn't have any problems. Everybody seemed to be pretty happy. Matter of fact, quite a few of them, she said she didn't even have to show up with to their meetings. They just went ahead and signed it. And she somewhat expects Norwood to probably come back in a later time and sign up for it.
Thank you. Any questions for the Chair of Public Safety, Justice, Peace, LECA, and Courts Administration? Seeing none, move on to, well, Mr. Salzer.
Mr. Chairman, I give you a very quick
That would be a first, Mr.
summation of the fact that we had a joint resolution,
Salzer. I
and
don't
we
want
had
you to hurry. Take your time.
and we had 7 resolutions.
All right.
And I could say quickly that we had a unanimous consent by everybody who voted on all these issues, unless you want me to give you the long report about each one of these, which I will. All right.
Do other members want any clarity specifically on any of the items?
They may want to hear who got the contracts and so
Okay,
forth.
go ahead.
All right. But you have already discussed the joint resolution one. I don't think we need to go over that one. But that was a white elephant early in the county's purchase of that and problems that we had, and now it's become what I would call a diamond in the rough down there. Anyway, we did agree to do some painting and moving furniture, so we had to get a bid on that for the human services, which is in there, and that bid was awarded to Central Illinois Commercial Flooring, and I think they're located out there in Pioneer Park area somewhere. The amount was $45,380, and the other bid on the painting and fixing that door frame and so forth, that was given to Mid-Illinois, and Mid-Illinois is located down here on Adams Street, and the amount there was the $21,900, and that comes to the about the $67,300 that Mark Little said we had agreed to do, and of course that will be returned to us. The next resolution is a resolution that has to do with the township project, and we're going to get Well, the entire cost is a little over $731,000. We're going to get something like $291,000 reimbursement from the state, and then we and Radnor Township. It has to do with the one-lane bridge, and it's out there on Mills Evansville Road, and the cost is probably going to end up being about $220 or so for both the township and us. So that comes out of the bridge funds and so forth. The Grange Hall Road Bridge project, that's going to go to White also. I should have mentioned that White got that contract. Now White, let me explain, they are out of Indiana, but they do have a headquarters over here now because they have purchased Halverson. Halverson's done work for us before, and they've also bid on a lot of our projects and so forth. Their home office is down in Springfield, and this is going to be our entire cost. It'll come out of our bridge fund, and what we did, it's a maintenance thing. We're trying to prevent problems. We found out that they definitely need a paint job and so forth on that bridge, but at each end, the expansion joints, that's what the real big problem was on this particular bridge. The next two, I think, have to do with hiring engineering firms. One of them has to do with the Brimfield Jubilee Road Bridge replacement, and we are going to give that to an engineering firm by the name of Hutchinson. Hutchinson has done work for us as well. The highway department, they have a right to choose the engineers on these projects. Now, I think the total cost is supposed to be about $196,000. They're going to, of course, make the recommendations in regards to this, and we'll get $158,000 that returned to us. So it's going to cost us somewhere in the neighborhood of about $38,000. The next engineering project that we had to hire, and I should have mentioned the fact that the reason we have to hire these engineers is the highway department, they haven't been able to hire any because they don't have the money, and so they put that back on us, and so they got to go out and hire some of these private firms and so forth. Hanson Engineering, which is well known for doing work for us, they've been hired to handle the situation up there on Truett Road, and I found out yesterday that I thought probably it was in Mr. Fennell's district, but it's in Mr. Elses's district. He dips down further than I thought. But what has happened, of course, is they found out that this road, Truett Road, there by the gravel pit, it had some serious problems and had to be closed, and eventually in the next one I'll tell you what we had to do to get it basically back open, because 2,500 vehicles pass over this bridge a day. Then we definitely had to keep it open, and of course we couldn't allow it to deteriorate. So the engineering part of this is going to be done by Hanson to prepare and get this bridge work done. I think it's going to come up in the summer of 21. It's going to cost us about $173,000. The last one on the one up there at Truett Bridge has to do with the signal lights, and because the state told us that we had to basically close it, we said, well, we can't close it because we can't put these cars out on township roads. In other words, if we detoured them, they'd go on our township roads, and township roads, of course, would not be able to handle them. We don't have the equipment to deal with traffic signal lights, so we hired Road Safe, a company over in East Peoria. They are the ones who have put up these traffic signals, and that's going to cost us a little over $82,000. So that's a temporary situation up there until we get it repaired. And the last one is just the annual report. This request by the Highway Department of their maintenance materials. As we do every year, they list the materials, they submit them out to the vendors. The vendors, give them a price on them and so forth. And if the company, if the first company doesn't, have the material available, then we go to the second bid, and then the third bid, and then the fourth bid. So they got some alternatives to choose different people, but they take the lowest bid first of all. And so we gave them, through the motor fuel tax, the right to go ahead and use that to get these bids out on their maintenance materials. Okay?
Thank you, Mr. Salzer. Questions or comments? Mr. Rosenbaum, Mr. Ricker, then.
Just a quick question. On the Truett Road Bridge, I understand the challenge with the bridge, but maybe explain how the traffic signals address the state's concern about traffic on the bridge, just for clarity for me.
Well, because of the weight of the traffic, they couldn't handle, the 2 lanes. They couldn't have 2 lanes. And so because we reduced it to 1 lane, then we had to have a traffic signal at each end to tell, those vehicles when they were to stop and when they were to proceed and so forth.
Nothing to do with the gross vehicle weight of the vehicle. It's just more or less preventing two-way traffic from being on the bridge at the same time, both lanes
Yes.
having vehicles on it. It's 1 lane. Did they shift it to a better side of the bridge that handles it, or is it just the fact you minimize the traffic on it at one time?
Mr. Sorrell might be able to help.
So, first of all, Mr. Salzer, excellent job in summarizing those things. Amy's been texting me because she's watching the live stream. But in relationship to the most recent question from Mr. Ricker, right now it's there is no weight limit, but it's if I remember correctly from my conversations with Amy, it'll be on one side, and then we'll be monitoring it, and then we'll actually move traffic patterns to the other side until we get into a construction phase. So we'll kind of go back and forth to minimize the additional impact on the bridge beams themselves.
Thank you, Mr. Salzer.
I was going to say, eventually, I think it's supposed to cost about $850,000 for that bridge, and the federal government's going to give us 80%.
You mean give us back
Yeah.
some money that we sent them, right? Right. All right, cool. Next committee would be, Mr. Dillon.
Land use, we had 1 case, petition of Michael Honiger, and that's a fairly common land split, about 5 acres from 60-some acres. Had a house and estate, so that was approved. And then the last one was amendment to Appendix A, building permit fee schedule, building and property maintenance code. So we've had some repeat offenders, contractors in town not pulling permits. So we asked planning and zoning to go back and look at our fee schedule. It hadn't been raised since early 2000s, I believe, Scott. Basically since the plan had been adopted. So our past fees have been $200 and $500, and what this does is make it double permit fee, but it still gives planning and zoning the leeway for homeowners that if you didn't know, she gave a nice chart, maps showing how many people have done this and how many people have actually ever gotten charged. So the issue arose from a fairly large project. Out-of-town contractor came in town, did not pull permits, got caught by Ameren, came and pulled out a permit, never once called us for a permit check, and it really didn't hit them in the pocketbook for doing that. And then we also have some repeat solar companies going around town not pulling permits out. So this is a way for people to actually, because this is a huge cost to after the fact to do it. So most people will never see a notice, but this is just to make the penalty a little bit more so that contractors would actually pull out permits, if that makes sense.
Thank you. Did I see your hand, Mr. Fennell? Jim, did I see your hand? Okay. Any questions for Mr. Dillon? Mr. Dillon, there do seem to be a lot of people knocking on doors trying to sell solar systems. Have you, maybe it's more in the city, I guess, because that's where most of us live, but is that one of the unpermitted enterprise?
So without naming names at the public meeting, if you look at the public documents, there's a few different solar companies that hit that multiple times. And I would remind citizens that reputable contractors do not go door to door knocking on your door to try to sell you a product. Typically. Not to say that everybody that knocks at your door is, but if you're trying to sell something via that way on your door, you need to make sure they're a local contractor, licensed and bonded, and have a reputation in past jobs. Typically, contractors that knock on your doors are out of state or fly-by-nights that are trying to get you real quick, and never pay money up front for any contractor that would ask for a down payment without work being provided first. No reputable contractor will ask you for that.
I like that public service message, but I'd like you to point out that Girl Scout cookies are a pretty legitimate enterprise. Correct, and they also don't make you prepay. Correct. Thank you. Okay, any question then for Mr. Dillon? I am interested in the solar thing, but I'll talk to you offline. I don't want to waste people's time.
Rules Committee.
Rules Committee, Jim?
So everybody should have received an email from Jan today, and that is a packet of the rules. The rules is our set of guidelines that govern this board for the course of the duration. So we usually typically reset the rules or reapprove the rules prior to a new board being set. So I would ask you to review the rules that were sent to you. Scott and Jan did an excellent job of putting notations onto the side of some of the things that we've talked about in committee. Nothing was set in stone yesterday. They were just suggestions. So it is myself as chairman, Sharon, Mr. Fennell, Coach Salzer, and Andrew is like on de facto on the committee. So we're giving a deadline till next Friday, not this Friday, the upcoming following Friday, to get something back to Scott or myself, or let somebody on the committee know if you have rule changes that you would like to see, so that they can be discussed, and we will be meeting 1 hour prior to the county board meeting to take some of those considerations. We had just some of the de facto stuff we talked about was, should we look at committees, some of the things that would get
Perhaps
committees.
you mean perfunctory stuff?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the Headington Oaks, do we move it to executive since we're looking at that? Steve, was a question of finance reports to your committee, but should it truly report to budget committee? So that was brought up. There was some other things about, there's a land use item in there that needed correction or just clarity that the state's attorney would be working on. There was also, should we look at the rules of how you to call a meeting? And then citizen remarks to give the chairman authority to actually allow somebody to speak if a card wasn't filled out, because we've done that in the past, but according to our rules, should have to suspend the rules to allow that. So it was just some clarity items, and we're open to any suggestions. And I know we would have to, the Social Justice and Equity Committee that we've talked about has to get put in there. And then we've also talked about moving some ROE EMAs, part of the health department anyway, and recycling to an actual health department, and having health would be redefined since it no longer has Headington Oaks to report to. So those are some of the suggestions, purely suggestions at this point. So anybody in that has something to say, please get something back to Scott or myself, preferably probably in writing, Scott, so that there's some sort of
The ideal would be electronically, but if you'd rather put pen to paper or typewriter, feel free to do that as well, just as long as we can get it. I know one member's already shared a couple of suggestions. So,
and that time frame then gives staff enough time to put something together for rules for us to review. And then if it's something that you want us for, the ones that voted out, to go to the full board members, so from a committee standpoint. So please let us know what you're thinking. But other than that, really no major changes to the design build of this board or anything else. Everybody remembers Mr. Mayor, how thorough he was before this, and these are basically the rules that he had always had set forth. So they're pretty sound rules. So open to any questions if you have any.
Thank you. I appreciate you getting it out in the air. It's sort of been a cloistered last-minute December meeting kind of a thing, Jim. So thanks for getting a head start on that and inviting everyone's participation. Next, Mr. Ricker.
So Ways and Means, we had several informational items, and then we had one resolution, was the typical monthly delinquent taxes, which did pass unanimously. And so those are the key topic.
Thank you. And then Mr. Fennell.
We had a little review on the budget process and where we stand from Randy and Scott. And then we had one resolution, which was the transfer of $1 million from the general fund to the risk management fund, and it was passed unanimously.
Thank you. Any questions for our vice chairperson, Mr. Fennell? Okay. We'd be at miscellaneous. Ms. Pastusha.
I just have a question. I know that this year has not gone as planned for anyone, but we had talked earlier in the year about having a strategic planning powwow for the county, and I didn't know if that was on the plan for the near future or when that was possibly going to happen.
It is. I think it's also on Mr. Sorrell's evaluation recommendation. So I don't believe, unless there's cost of services from a third party that's north of $20K, which would be his authority anyway, that anything would get in the way of that. Setting that date, time, or place is a different story. I think we would do that. Setting, since there's really nothing in the way of doing that unless it was money, and I don't think that's the problem. Setting the date, time, and place would be our job to do. So it's a little early to do that. It would be a little early to do that now based on my count of notices, because folks don't know what their calendar necessarily is going to be. Cool? All right. Saying no other comments. Sharon, did I see your hand? No? Okay. We'd be adjourned. Thank you.